Hi, everyone. It's so nice to be here, and thank you so much for taking your Thursday evening to let me talk a little bit to you guys. Um, like Jen said, I'm an attorney at Legal Aid of Northwest Texas, and I am running a new mental health law project out of our Dallas office that I'm going to be talking with you guys about tonight. So I have a PowerPoint. I'm going to share my screen just one second. Let's see. Y'all are seeing my whole screen now, are you? Sorry, we tried this before and it was working, so one second.
I think you opened it up earlier using Keynote.
Yeah, let me see. It's open on my computer. I'm sorry, you guys. We tried this. Oh, there we go. Okay. Thank you. Got it. All right. Let me start. Okay. So, like I said, here to talk tonight about where civil legal needs and mental health intersect. A little bit about me. Like I said, I'm an attorney at Legal Aid of Northwest Texas. I went to law school intending to work in disability rights and mental health, and I spent some time at Disability Rights Texas and at the Bazelon Center for Mental Health Law before coming to Legal Aid of Northwest Texas to start this program. It's a 2-year grant that we received to work in Dallas County, specifically to help adults who have mental health needs here in the area. And we're funded by the Equal Justice Works program and sponsored by Greenberg-Traurig and the Texas Access to Justice Foundation. And they make me say that before I do anything. So let's get started. Today I'm going to talk with you guys. I want to give a brief overview about legal aid so that you're aware of this resource that's available to people in the Northwest Texas area. And then I'm going to talk specifically about my project and some of the legal issues that we see come up a lot for people who have mental health needs. And then if we have hopefully enough time, I'd really like to talk about one of my favorite things to do, which is to work on psychiatric advance directives and help people do some planning in advance to kind of take control and have some autonomy over their legal planning. So I'll talk a little bit about that. And then I have one very brief slide about COVID-19 and some things to look out for as far as changes in the law and protections that might be available in case you're experiencing some kind of issue related to COVID-19. So this first part, just about Legal Aid Northwest Texas. We're a nonprofit law firm, so we provide free legal services in civil matters. So in the law, there's kind of this big division between the civil side of things and the criminal side. And we do not do any criminal law and just work on civil. We have a huge service area. There's 114 counties in the area, and within that there are 1.5 million people who are eligible for our services. And so that's sort of who we are. Some of what we do, what it means to say, a civil legal service we offer and help in a huge variety of areas, including federal tax issues, public benefits, foreclosure prevention, disaster assistance, including COVID-19, family law, so divorces and child support, landlord-tenant issues, and also disability rights. And we do that. There's so much more, but that's just a quick summary of all the things we do. There are a couple of things that we definitely don't do. We don't do any medical malpractice or personal injury cases. And like I said, we don't do any of the criminal side. So if you have an issue that's criminal related, we can refer you to people, but we're not able to accept that kind of case. To be eligible, so like I said, we provide our services are free, and we're funded by grants, and so we have some eligibility requirements to make sure we're serving the population that has the most need. So you have to meet a certain income level. Typically speaking, that's below 200% of the federal poverty line. But there are some exceptions. And so I always just say, if you think you might qualify, to apply anyway, because depending on your legal issue, there are some exceptions. And we also have to have be asset eligible, which just means that you don't have a lot of extra assets outside of a home, a car, and some other exceptions. So if you have more than $10,000, then you wouldn't be eligible. But there are some exceptions there as well. So there are exceptions to every rule. So I always just say, if you're interested in our services, to go ahead and apply and see if you qualify. Also, part of our grant funding, we aren't able to serve certain people with certain legal statuses. So you have to either be a U.S. citizen or have a qualifying legal status. But that there's a huge, giant, complicated, long list of people who qualify. So I always err on the side of applying for services if you think you might qualify. And then you have to have a legal problem that fits within one of our priorities. And some examples of the priorities, this is a scary slide and a big list, but we're really, the goal is for us to assist people with things that are the most pressing. So we do focus a lot on specific areas in each of the areas of law that we practice. But mainly we have a ton of experts in a lot of different areas. And so if you have a legal issue that you think you need help with, just reach out. And this is our, just a slide about our general application process. You can apply online, and you can also apply over the phone. So this is there's one centralized intake for everyone across our huge service area. So if people are interested in applying that way, that information's up here. But disclaimer that if you're in Dallas County and you have a mental health need, you are eligible for a streamlined application process directly to me. And I'll talk about that as we get going. Part of that is that my goal is to make our services more accessible to people with mental health needs in Dallas. And calling the central line can sometimes take a while and can take a long time. So I would encourage you to call my cell phone, because that's a quicker way to apply. And I'll have that info at the end. Our offices right now are closed for COVID. We're working from home, but when there's something pressing, we do meet people at our office to, if it's an emergency. So just want y'all to be aware about that. Okay. All right, so now the fun part, we can talk about my project and this new initiative that we're taking to try and really reach out to people who have mental health needs in the area, and just make our services more accessible. The idea, at least in my mind, is that civil legal issues are a part of a broader set of services that everybody needs access to. So I see our services as really working alongside social supports, physical health needs, the criminal side, and mental health treatment, to provide just, we're part of a wraparound team to help people. And the areas that civil legal aid can help in, like I've talked about, are really broad, but as far as the life areas that we can help in, we help people with housing, individual rights, personal stability, economic stability, education and employment. And so I like to think of it and think of this project as sort of making things more holistic. Unfortunately, people really need legal representation in civil matters and don't often get it. Y'all might know that for criminal law, if you're indigent, if you're in poverty, you're often appointed a lawyer by the court. And the same isn't true on the civil side of things. And so people are facing really serious consequences, like losing their home, losing their benefits, and they're not able to have a lawyer. And so these are some really sad statistics about Texas and just how bad we're doing in this area. We rank 47th in access to legal aid lawyers. And in Texas, there's about one legal aid lawyer for every 8,000 Texans. So it's really disheartening, but I think, and the reason that we have this new mental health project is that you can imagine that with those statistics, adding in another barrier or, additional needs that are not being met can make that justice gap much more difficult for people who have mental health needs too. So Legal Aid of Northwest Texas, we're really committed to mental health and disability rights. In 2018, we started a medical legal partnership in Tarrant County, and I got to work there for a little while and get trained by the attorneys over there. And then this year we started our new project in Dallas County. So I'm really excited and hopeful that we can be a resource to everyone on this call and everyone in the Dallas community too. It's not letting me go forward. Okay, so my project, the goal is to promote housing stability and income maintenance for adults with mental health needs in Dallas County. To be eligible for our services, you just have to have a mental health need. It's not, we're not strict. There's no requirement that you have a certain diagnosis or that you even have a diagnosis at all. We are really just trying to increase access. So as long as you self-identify and tell us that, that that's something going on with you, then we're able to take your application. You also have to meet the general LANWIT eligibility or legal aid eligibility criteria. I'm sorry if I keep saying LANWIT, that's the acronym that we use. So you have to meet our general eligibility criteria that I talked about earlier. And there are three main things that are that this new project is trying to do. The first is to provide direct representation and assistance in legal matters on the ground that people are experiencing. The second thing we're trying to do is just kind of build community and create partnerships, let people know that we're here, and do educational trainings just like this one. Y'all are helping me by having me here tonight. We're trying to get the word out and educate people in advance so that you kind of know what your rights are and you know what's available to you. And then the last thing we're hoping to do, and I'm trying to figure out how to do all this virtually with COVID, but we are trying to do some same-day legal clinics where people can come in and receive services from an attorney right then and there and get to leave with either the advice that they needed or some advanced planning documents, just to make it super easy so you don't have to do a whole lot to get the service. So we're hoping to host some clinics sometime soon. And hopefully they will be virtual, but we'll see. Okay, so as far as direct representation goes, and that's the kind of the meat of the program, and I want to just sort of give you guys a general idea of some of the types of cases that we take, so that you know and can recognize if the people in your life or if you might have issues like this that you're really able to get legal help and legal advice about. The first main area is housing. I'm sure y'all know how important stable housing is for mental health. And so it's really one of my passions. It's how I got really interested in this project, this area of the laws to help people maintain their homes. And it's especially important now with COVID. I list here some of the types of cases that we take. I love doing reasonable accommodation requests. I don't know if y'all are aware, but under the Fair Housing Act, landlords are required to make changes in their policies and their procedures to help people who have disabilities enjoy their home and stay in their home. And so it's a really underused right, actually. And so in the next slide, I'm going to talk about different kinds of reasonable accommodations people get that a lot of times when I talk to people, they have no idea that they're allowed to even ask for these things. And it can really help people stay in their home. And it's also often a defense to an eviction action. So in addition to doing those requests in advance, which I love doing, and they're great because they are it's kind of like a proactive way to prevent the housing crisis from happening. So I like doing those, but we also are, of course, available to assist when there is a housing crisis, such as an eviction or a termination of a public housing voucher. And we also get involved a little kind of in the middle ground there where there's a landlord-tenant dispute, but there's not yet like a lawsuit being filed. So here's some of the common reasonable accommodations that I've seen and had success with. If you receive your payment, your check from Social Security late in the month, a lot of times they disperse like on the 3rd. You can request that your landlord accept your rent late every month. I've come across people who are doing things like having to get money from a friend so that they can pay on time and then pay their friend back when they get their check. And it's really not a great, it's hard to do that. And you're able to actually make a request to your landlord that you pay your rent late because you're receiving your disability check later in the month. We also do a ton of emotional support animal requests for reasonable accommodation, modification of pet policy. You're not supposed to have to pay a pet fee if you have an emotional support animal because they're not a pet, they're an emotional support animal. And so we can do both of those things. An area that comes up a lot is behavioral lease violations. So if a person has had a particularly rough night, for example, and the police have had to come out, and their landlord is upset and trying to evict them, if that behavioral violation was a result of their mental health issue, we're able to make a request to try and prevent that from going any further and keep them in their home. We also assist with if people are on a Section 8 housing voucher and they need to be relocated because of their disability or because of their mental health need, we can assist with some transfer requests. And finally, and there are many more reasonable accommodations, but the last most common one that we see are people who need to terminate their lease early because they might need to move somewhere where they have more support or something like that. So we can do those as well. The second main area, so that's the first main area, is housing. The second area is this kind of economic stabilization that we're trying to work toward by assisting people with public benefits. And so we don't assist with initial applications for benefits, but we do assist with appeals, overpayment issues, and I can't think of other things right now, but any kind of problems that people are having with their benefits, Medicaid not paying for something or things like that. And so if you're having a problem there, we have an awesome team of attorneys who work on public benefits, and I keep saying I love these cases too. And so if you guys have any issues there, we're here to help. I will say on that side, it's important to reach out as early as possible, especially with a Social Security benefits denial, because it takes a long time to secure the medical records that we need in order to work on the appeal. And so I would say if you know someone or if you personally get a denial, reaching out to us as quickly as you can is super important. And then the last area, of this project, we like to work on advanced directives. And so these are really exciting because I think, like I've tried to kind of emphasize, I'm not sure if I'm doing it well, but one of the goals of this project is to intervene earlier before your issue becomes a full crisis, a full legal crisis, I mean. And one way of doing that is to work on these advanced directives. Before I started this project, I spent a lot of time in law school while I was training on alternatives to guardianship. And it's one of my favorite things is working on these alternate ways to preserve autonomy and keep people independent as much as possible, while also acknowledging that people might need different kinds of support. So we do like powers of attorney. So those are documents where a person can appoint someone to make decisions on their behalf, either when they're not able to, or they can also appoint someone to make decisions on their behalf when they're fully competent and they just need a little bit of help. We also do supported decision-making agreements, which are novel to Texas, and they're kind of like powers of attorney, except the person doesn't appoint someone to be their agent and make decisions for them. They appoint someone to support them in making decisions. And so that's a a really fun document to get to do. Um, we can help with living wills, where we are able to help people decide in advance what they want to have happen. If they're in an end of life scenario, people have been interested in this because of COVID, and we're able to do that. We're also able, of course, to do a full will as well. And then the Declaration for Mental Health Treatment, or the Psychiatric Advance Directive, which hopefully I'll be able to get to before the end of the presentation. So just some examples, and I know I've already kind of given some examples, so I apologize if I repeat myself. But these are some, and these are not real people. These are just in a hypothetical version of cases that we've kind of seen that might come to us. So one thing we see frequently, people come to us who've had history of hospitalizations that are affecting their housing. So oftentimes a person will have to go to the hospital, and then they're in the hospital, so they're not paying rent during that time. When they get out, we've had people who have got out in the hospital and they go home and there's, their landlord's removed all of their things, which is horrible. But unless, extreme examples, maybe they just come back and they have a notice to vacate, which is the first thing a landlord does before they file an eviction because they haven't paid rent. So the first thing that I would do to help them is to make a reasonable accommodation request, explain that this has happened because of their mental health need, and try and stop the eviction from happening. But the second thing that I want to try and do is also come up with some legal tools to help this from happening in the future. If a person and if you're going to the hospital a lot and that might happen again, we can work on some documents to appoint your supporter who's going to pay your rent for you if you're in the hospital, for example. And so we'll both want to address the issue that's in front of us and also try and do something so that you're not going through it again. A second thing we see a lot is when people are turning 18, transitioning into adulthood. I don't know how much NAMI comes across this issue, but it's a huge deal when a person with a mental health need or a disability is turning 18. A lot of times, they want to be as independent as possible, but they still need some assistance. And then sometimes they're also concerned about losing their Social Security benefits that they've received as a child, because there are reviews that Social Security does when you turn 18, and the standards change when you're a child to when you're an adult. And so in that instance, we can help talking about alternatives to guardianship and ways to support this person and make sure that they are able to be as independent as possible. And then also work on making that transition easy as far as benefits go, to do everything we can to make sure that the benefits are not denied. And then this third example, we see a lot of consumer, and I didn't talk about this when I was giving the overview of what the Mental Health Project works on, but we have a ton of consumer issues often come in, and people will come in with a lot of debt. Some of it may be disputed because of identity theft issues, and a lot of times people are being really harassed by debt collectors, and it's harming their mental health. And so we can do multiple things. We can assist with the identity theft issue. We can assist as far as protecting people from that debt collector harassment, and explain, just advise about what kind of responsibilities and rights you might have about this underlying debt. And then, like I said, I always try and do kind of a two-pronged approach where we address the main issue and then explore some supports that we can put in place for the underlying problem, to talk about different financial supports that are available, like powers of attorney for decision-making agreements, or even just joint bank accounts or rep payee for Social Security, which is where Social Security will have someone else assist with the disbursement of the check. On that side, though, we also help where people are being abused by the person who's supposed to be helping them. So if they have, for example, a representative payee who's not doing what they're supposed to do with the Social Security money, we can get involved there too. And so I just wanted to make sure I said that, because I know a lot of times these supporters are not doing what they're supposed to do. So that's sort of the overall summary. I wanted to talk about psychiatric advance directives, but I wanted to look at the chat really quick because this is kind of, I'm shifting to a different topic. So I see Anne asked if there's someone in my position in the Fort Worth area. We do have a medical legal partnership out there working directly with clients with mental health needs. I don't know about their application process, so I'll have to look into it and get back to you. And I'd be happy to send a copy of my presentation out to everyone who's been at the meeting tonight. I can work with Jen for that. And then lastly, yes, we do have Spanish speaking staff in our office. I personally don't speak Spanish. We do have attorneys who speak Spanish, and we also have every attorney has an interpreter, so that who's on our staff, we don't have to do a language line. And we do have a language line for people who speak languages other than English or Spanish, but for Spanish we have interpreters. So I have someone assigned to me. Okay, great. So I'm excited we have enough time to talk about psychiatric advance directives. So I don't know if any of y'all have heard of this, but it's a really cool advanced planning document designed to preserve rights for people who have mental health needs. And in Texas, it's called a Declaration for Mental Health Treatment. Oops, sorry. But it's called a Declaration for Mental Health Treatment, but mostly or colloquially across the country, people call these documents PADs. And so that's what I'll call it, even though the statute says something different. But so PADs, like I said, they're documents that allow individuals with mental health needs to articulate their treatment preferences prior to a mental health crisis or hospitalization. So the laws on PADs they're state-based, they're different in every state you go to. Some states have them and some states don't, but they're used across the country and the world too, which is really cool and exciting. They've also been around a long time. I think they first started about in the 80s, but they're just not really very widely in use. I'm not totally sure why, but we're trying to, at Legal Aid here in Dallas, and also in Austin, the Legal Aid organization down there, and in San Antonio, they're trying to get the word out that these are available. So in the most basic form, it's a document where the person who signs it, they're called the declarant. They can state their preferences about 3 different types of mental health treatment. And those are psychoactive medication, electroconvulsive treatment, and emergency treatment. And this is what it looks like. So you can kind of see there are these 3 main sections, which types of treatment you can specify what you would like to have happen. And then if you'll see in the middle of the second page, I don't know how clear this picture is for y'all, but there's a space for additional preferences or instructions. As an attorney, we love this part because it means we can put in a lot of different things that are not already specified in the document. And so it's an opportunity to turn this into a really personalized document where you can specify what you would like to have happen if you're going through an episode and not able to express your wishes. So some example of different things that we work with people on, you can specify your physical medical conditions. So if there's certain medications you know you need in the hospital for your physical medical conditions, you can put that in there. You can put in information for law enforcement. This is a tricky area, but it's something that, we're trying to see ways that we can improve interactions with law enforcement. And so we have a page where you can list out ways that you prefer to be interacted with, things that you need, things that you definitely do not want to have happen when you're interacting with law enforcement. With the idea being that you can have the document on you and show it to them, or a person who supports you can have the document and show it. There's a section for directives for notification if you're hospitalized. And so this would be, if you definitely want someone notified, and also if you definitely do not want someone notified, you can put that in there as well. We can put in accommodations and communication that are needed for attorneys and caseworkers. If you really need a quiet space when you're talking with someone, if you have a hearing issue and different things like that, we can put that in there. And then I've seen these documents have all kinds of other things, kind of like what we were talking about earlier, where if you're in the hospital and no one's paying your rent, we can put in there who you want to have pay your rent, who you want to have manage your employment, talk to your employer, things like that, so that you really have it planned out in advance what you want to have happen. I will say that the document itself does not authorize the person to do those things. And so I also would advise people to, at the same time as filling out this document, to fill out a power of attorney or support decision-making agreement that allows the supporter to take those actions on your behalf. And so we would do, well, I would advise a person who is wanting to do a psychiatric advance directive to also consider those documents as well. There are a ton of benefits to doing a document like this. It's essential communication, really important information for the doctors who are treating you, for advocates who are helping you, providers. And for me, if someone comes to me and they have one of these, I definitely want to see it so that I know how I can serve you best. It's also just a really awesome empowerment tool. It's a way, it's in the law, it's a right you have to specify what you would like to have happen if you're hospitalized and you're not able to communicate your preferences. And it's, it's been there since the 80s, and it's, everyone's right to execute one of these. It's also just cool for awareness. It helps you think in advance about your treatment decisions and have planning conversations with your support network. A lot of people who in San Antonio and in Austin who are working on these pads will do it in combination when they're doing a RAP program, the Wellness Recovery Action Plan. So they'll go through the RAP program and then at the end work with an attorney to do a pad that really reflects what they've worked on in that program. So it's really cool and something I hope we can get going up here too. There's also studies that show that people who have a PAD have a significant improvement in their relationship with providers, increased treatment satisfaction, and fewer coercive crisis interventions, which is what we want. I just have a quote here where someone talks about, what their PAD has meant to them and how it allows them to be an active part of their treatment when they're not able to. And just found it really inspiring. There's in the source, there's a really good guide to these on the SAMHSA website. And I have a slide, I think, that links some PAD resources in here too. So like I said, it's just it's a rights preserving document, and it's a proactive step that I really recommend everyone consider doing. There are some legal logistics. These are kind of boring. So I won't go too far into it. I would definitely counsel someone who is wanting to execute it on all of the very intricate, annoying details. But they're valid for 3 years after you execute one. They only take legal effect if a judge has found that you're incapacitated, either in a guardianship or a medication hearing. However, and so that sounds like it's really limiting, but the PAD can also really be used informally with your doctors when you're not found incapacitated. So that's that. Okay, so this is just some resources if you guys are interested in learning more. There's a National Resource Center on Psychiatric Advance Directives, and there are a lot of cool videos about PADs. One of the attorneys from San Antonio, who I work with pretty closely, did a TED Med talk about it, which is really inspiring. She's amazing, and I would recommend everyone watch that if you're interested in more. And that's the link in the middle on this slide. And so like I mentioned earlier, there are a bunch of other planning tools available. And I think the reason I'm so passionate about this is just that people don't know that these documents are there waiting for them, and that, everyone's able to execute these if they want to plan in advance, if they think it might be useful to them. I just wanted to, I think this is one of my last slides, end by saying a couple of things that we don't do, but that the PAD can help with. We don't take criminal cases, like I said, and we also don't represent people in involuntary commitment proceedings or medication hearings. That's because in both of those contexts, you are appointed an attorney. And so it's kind of a division of labor on the part of the people who fund these services that because you're going to get an attorney, the free civil legal attorneys can't take these kinds of cases, or else we'd be overlapping. And I think y'all will have a presentation about both of these things next month. They're both super important areas of the law, and an area where the psychiatric advance directive, the civil side that we're working on, can kind of assist and be useful for people who are interacting with law enforcement and hospitalization. And so, yeah, that's all the direct representation part. This part is just about community outreach, and just wanting to emphasize that, you know, we're here and we're wanting to do everything we can to reach the community. So if anyone on this call is interested and knows a group that, you know, if you want a presentation on a particular legal issue like Social Security or housing or something like that, you know, we're available to present anytime. Just let us know. And then lastly, okay, good. We're going to have time for questions. Great. COVID has changed everything for everyone, but it's also, there's just so many different legal impacts from COVID. And so I just wanted to give a summary of kind of a couple of key things, just in case y'all yourselves or someone you know is experiencing something related to COVID and might want some more information. I'm sure you guys have seen on the news, there are new eviction protections for tenants who aren't able to pay rent. Lots of different laws moving here. So if you're in a situation where you're not able to pay rent, definitely reach out to us. We have a ton of different resources for rental assistance. In addition to, you know, we can advise you about the different laws and how they might apply to you. There are also, you know, specific reasonable accommodation requests we can do for people who either have COVID or who are immunocompromised or have other impacts because of COVID, like anxiety, depression, anything that's been exacerbated by the COVID situation. You know, there's definitely protections there if you need assistance in that area. As far as public benefits go, a lot of the offices are closed and hearings are being conducted over the phone. If you have issues, let's say you've been trying to appeal your Social Security denial for months and no one has answered the phone, something like that, reach out to us because we might be able to get an extension on your deadline, something like that. And then just the advanced directives, you know, have a lot more relevancy now that we're facing this pandemic. So if you know someone who might be interested in doing estate planning, just to give, you know, it can provide control over a situation where there's really very little that we can control in this, but we're here to help with anything we can on the legal side that's coming up because of COVID. So that's all I have planned. I would love to, if anyone has questions, take them. This is my contact information. I also, oh, nope. Okay, let me put it back up. Sorry. I have a flyer that I'm going to try and drag into the chat if I can be tech savvy. This is my email and my direct line. That line gets to my cell phone. So if you have questions, if you want to apply for services, if you know someone who you think should apply for services, you can give me a call. I'd love to talk about it. If you want to reach the general Landwidth legal aid intake line, that's on the second in the middle right there. That's our website. And then the general number is right there, that 888 number. They're super helpful too. And you can apply that way too. It just might take a little bit longer. Also, like I said, if anyone, you know, you want a more detailed presentation, you have a specific question that you think a group might, you know, if it's a support group or a parent group, or if there's something you think would be really useful for me to present on, or for one of the other attorneys in our group to present on, you just call me and I'll see what we can do, because we really want to reach out and be in the community as much as possible. I know this was a lot of information. I hope it was helpful. And if y'all have questions, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can see you guys and hopefully take some questions.
Caitlin, the first question I'm going to start off with actually came to us a little before. I'm going to start off with this question, but we have a decent sized group. So what I'm also going to do is just allow people to unmute themselves also. So either if you've dropped in in the chat, we can read it off, or if you feel more comfortable taking yourself off mute and answering your question, you now have that option. The first question goes from somebody within the Tarrant County region. And then one of their greatest interests was helping their clients with SSDI benefits. And with their own experience, they found that it was more effective having an attorney's assistance from the beginning. Is this something, you can provide us some more information on?
Yes, definitely. So the first thing I would say is just I agree with you that applying for Social Security, it's a long, challenging process. And honestly, the majority of applicants are denied at that first stage. We call it like a rite of passage that most people who apply are going to immediately get denied. I don't know why they do that, but they do. And so almost everyone has to appeal. There's 4 appeal stages with Social Security. So the first is called a request for reconsideration. To get to that stage, it takes about, or to get them to review that appeal, it takes about 2 to 6 months. The second stage is the administrative law judge hearing. And most people are also denied at that second stage, unfortunately, too. So your initial application is most likely going to be denied, and your second application or your first appeal is also probably going to be denied. And most people win their case at the administrative law judge stage, and that takes about 9 months to a year to get scheduled for one of those. After that, there's an appeals council stage that takes about a year for that to happen. And then finally, the last level of appeal is in front of a federal court. All of that is to say it's a super long process. It's really challenging to stick through it. As far as having an attorney involved, our office, we typically do not do any initial applications just because there's not really a legal issue at that time that you're applying. And we just have so many applicants, we're not able to assist at that stage. However, there are private attorneys who take these cases on contingency, which means that they will not be paid unless you win. And the reason is that they will get a portion, or typically they will take a portion of the back benefits that you receive after they win your case. I don't know how often they take cases at the application stage. It's really for them, I would guess it's a preference on whether they want to start at that process, but I can provide to y'all. There's an organization that has a referral service for private attorneys who take these Social Security cases. It's called the National Organization for Social Security Claimant Representatives. I'll type it into the chat. They have a phone number, a referral line. You can call there and give them your area, and they'll provide you a list of private attorneys who take Social Security cases. And they might, all of that's to say, they might start it from the beginning at the application stage, but our organization does not. So I just added that in the chat there. There's also an organization called SOAR, and they assist people who are experiencing homelessness with applying for Social Security, and they have highly trained social workers who work on these applications. I was trying to find their contact information earlier, and I couldn't just find it on my computer. So I will follow up with a phone number for them if that's the client population, or if you're experiencing homelessness and you need to apply, they can help. And they're not attorneys though, they're social workers. So, yeah. Great question. Sorry, that was a really long answer.
I also have somebody wanting to know, how big is y'all's office staff, and are psychiatric advanced directives the same with powers of attorneys?
Good question. So our office staff, so for my particular Dallas County mental health project, it is me and my legal secretary. So 2 of us, but we have a very large team supporting us. So we have, I think we have 15 attorneys now on our division, which is doing housing, public benefits, consumer. And then in the Dallas office, we also have a gigantic family law team, much bigger than our our consumer and public benefits team. So I don't know quite the number of attorneys on the family law team. But as far as legal aid outside of Dallas, we have hundreds of maybe 400 or 500 attorneys. So we're big. The second part of your question was, are psychiatric advance directives the same as a power of attorney? No. The psychiatric advance directive is where a person can specify, I want this kind of mental health treatment in the event that I'm incapacitated. And specifically this kind of mental health treatment. A power of attorney, I'm thinking you're thinking of a medical power of attorney. That's where you say, I want my mom or I want my friend to decide for me if I'm not able to make the decision. So they're a little bit different. It's a really good question because the statute in the law actually has to specify what happens if the medical power of attorney is saying something different from the psychiatric advance directive. And the law has specified that the psychiatric advance directive will overrule what the medical power of attorney says if they conflict. So good question. I hope that answered it.
I have someone who says a psychiatric advance directive requires that the individual with the mental illness essentially to agree for the execution, correct? And the fact that we receive a lot of calls from family members whose loved ones are in denials about their condition and don't necessarily trust anyone to make decisions for them. What options can we give callers who need help with an adult or relative who refuses care? Is there anything we can do legally other than a mental health warrant or calling a mobile crisis unit or 911?
That's an amazing question. And really it gets to the heart of it. Yes, the psychiatric advance directive requires the individual to agree. They are the one picking what they want to have happen if they're incapacitated. As far as, they don't trust anyone to make decisions for them. There's no way to force someone to sign one of these documents, and it would be malpractice for me to execute one when the person didn't want to. And so it's a big issue. I think one silver lining with the psychiatric advance directive with the PAD, the person isn't directing anyone to do anything for them. They are making a decision about what they want to have happen in their mental health treatment. So it's often a good, I guess it's like a good entry into some of these other options, like a supported decision-making agreement. In both of those cases, the person is never giving authority to someone else to make their decision, neither with the psychiatric advance directive or the supported decision-making agreement. They're just saying, if I am incapacitated, I want this to happen. Or with the supported decision-making agreement, they're saying, I pick my mom or my sister, or whoever, my supporter, to help me make a decision, but the document doesn't actually give decision-making power to someone else. So I would say if I had a family member come in and say, my son just doesn't want any help, what can we do? I would say those two documents would be the first thing I would try. Of course, the person would have to be in a space where they're able to understand the document in order to sign it. So that would be a limitation as well. But as far as what to do legally, there's nothing, unfortunately, really to do other than the options you mentioned, the mental health warrant, calling a mobile crisis unit. There's not a really good solution. Of course, the guardianship is an option, but it's very hard to get a guardianship for just a mental health condition, and it's not something that I would select as a first choice either.
Next one we have, their 46-year-old son needs housing. How does he apply for Section 8, and is there a long waiting period?
Good question. So I can definitely direct you to Section 8 has a website with information on how to apply. If you're in Dallas, it's the Dallas Housing Authority. As far as the waiting period, yes, unfortunately, there's a super long waiting period for Section 8. And I don't know if I'm not sure if it's open right now for application. What I will say is that there are other housing support options that are coming up now, especially with COVID. There's a lot more rental assistance and housing support available. I'm trying to think of the best website to direct you to for that. I would say that if you go to our website, Legal Aid in Northwest Texas, if you just Google us, there's a COVID-19 tab on the top, and you can, if you select that, there's a whole page of different resources, and one of those resources is rental assistance and housing assistance. So I would say try there to look for resources there. I can go ahead and read the next one too. Let me see. Can someone who is diagnosed incompetent by a doctor revoke the in writing the PAD? That's a great question. I'm glad you asked it because I didn't address it. So the PAD, once you execute one, you cannot revoke it after you've been declared incompetent, and it will remain in effect until you are declared competent again. So that's one of those things that I would definitely talk to a person about when you're signing one, because it is something to consider that if you are declared incompetent, you won't be able to revoke it until the judge has changed that determination. So good question.
We have time for at least one more question. Does anybody else want to ask Caitlin a wrap-up question for the evening? You've done a phenomenal job, by the way. Thank you so much, Caitlin.
Thank you. So happy to be here. And yeah, if anyone has any extra questions, shout them out.
Caitlin and I did speak before. We have her information accessible at the office. But also, if you leave this program tonight and there's a question that you aren't able to get in the chat, or you just remembered after the fact, feel free to reach out to the NAMI North Texas office, which is info@naminorthtexas.org, and I can see that Caitlin gets that information. Let me double check the chat. All righty, if there are no more questions, Caitlin, I want to thank you for your time, and everybody, I would like to thank you for your time for spending the evening with us. And thank you so much for your presentation, Caitlin. This was really informative, and we look forward to continuing to work with you guys and using you guys as a resource.
Thank you guys so much, and don't hesitate to reach out. I'm here and waiting for your calls, so definitely reach out.